Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. This is yours truly, Pastor Todd. It is no accident that Dallas Cowboys football is right over my head. Been reading too much draft news. So here we got a good draft class. So, I'm on my cross hunt, and I cheated a little bit today, like when kids just go to the basket of eggs and start picking them out of somebody else's basket. I'm just picking a cross off of my cross wall here in my office. But it's as all the crosses on my wall, it's dear to me and has a bit of a story and will inspire the poem that I read for today. So let me go get it. This is called a Tau cross. You can see, maybe you need to get it a little closer to you. See that? It's in the shape of a Tau, which is the last Hebrew letter and a Greek letter. It's called a little something different in Hebrew. It escapes me. But it's that sound. It's the same T sound as the Tau Greek letter. And the Tau cross, as it's called, is beloved of St. Francis. And this was given to me by one of my powerful and beloved mentors, Reverend Tim Boglin, former Catholic priest turned Methodist minister. He's gone on to the next level of creation way too early. He was only in his 50s, some health complications. I miss him dearly, but this will always mean a lot to me because it reminds me of him. So I want to tell you a little bit about why St. Francis was enamored of this cross, used this cross in his ministry. So the shape of it is said to be, this is a very old style of cross, back to the very early, perhaps first Christians. One of the reasons it's used is because this is the actual shape, as understood by historians, of the cross. Now you can look this up on Google and other resources, religious resources, for the veracity of this statement, but I've read a few articles that stated that what the Romans actually did was to strip trees, big tree trunks, and at the very top they would nail a beam across, and that's how they would crucify people. Unfortunately, not a very positive image, but when you hear the term hang on a tree, it's believed that's where that comes from. So this is actually, according to some historians, the actual shape of the cross on which Jesus would have been crucified. It's also the last, as I said, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet that kind of parallels this idea of the Alpha and Omega. Those are Greek letters, but Jesus being the beginning and the end of all creation or all human spiritual goals. So this was also, and there's a lot to say about the Tau cross, but I'll end with this part. It was used as a sign for the Hebrews even before Jesus. They were in the book of Ezekiel, it is said that they would make this mark on the poor of Israel in order that they may receive from God blessings and relief from their poverty and suffering. So that is why I have this Tau cross on my wall. So, in honor of this Tau cross that St. Francis of Assisi loved so much, I'm going to read to you a poem by St. Francis from our book for lovers of God everywhere, a book of Christian mystic poems. So this is called Wring Out My Clothes. It's very short, so pay attention. Such love does the sky now pour, that whenever I stand in a field, I have to ring out the light when I get home. And this is what Roger Houston has to say about it. St. Francis is a fool for God. I can just imagine him doing this, wringing out the light from his clothes after a day in the Umbrian countryside. He is ecstatic with the downpouring of love he feels from his Creator. For light is love, and wisdom made visible, and he is drenched in it. This is another Daniel Ladinsky rendering, that's who translated it. And it shows, both in the simplicity and in the surprising humor of a single image. It is entirely in the mood and tone of St. Francis, who would spend as much time in nature as in any church. So, interesting that Roger Houston would use the idea of, or the concept of being a fool for God, for that is certainly borne out in any biography of St. Francis that you'll read. This idea of not following human convention and not making God fit into human understanding, but even to the point of acting foolishly in the eyes of men in order to get across the tradition-breaking, concept-bending nature of God, and the nature of God's love for us, which is unquenchable, unending. So this idea of St. Francis being a fool for God inspired me to choose one of the prayer exercises in our book Armchair Mystic. I chose one of those exercises that luckily we get to do this alone or behind a closed door, but it may make us feel a little silly or foolish to do this. But I invite you, I urge you to continue to spend 5 minutes a day on different forms of prayer. So this is what we're going to do for our 5 minutes. I want you to, just in silence, find your armchair. I'm back in my very comfortable armchair. The church is empty and quiet, so I'll be able to do this in solitude. So I'm going to spend some time in quiet, imagining a time in my life earlier as a younger person that was a difficult time for me. I imagine the story of myself during a time that was very difficult for me. And then I want you to picture across from you, I happen to have a chair just like this one right there. So I'm a little bit spoiled in this regard because I have all the necessities of doing this 5-minute prayer exercise right here. So find your armchair, sit in it, spend some quiet time thinking about a troubled time in your life. Then I want you to picture across from you Jesus sitting and listening to you, and say out loud, tell Jesus the story of that time in your life. And then at the end, say a small prayer for that younger version of yourself. This is a practice that we can utilize to grow stronger and more adept at this second stage of our prayer life, which is praying with God. This spontaneous and courageous and honest way of talking to God as you would a friend, a confidant, a counselor. So that exercise again is spend a minute or two in quiet thinking of a difficult time in your life. Out loud, tell Jesus, who you imagine sitting across from you, all about it. And then a quick prayer at the end, a spontaneous prayer at the end for that younger version of yourself. So that's your challenge, my friends. Felt like there was another. Oh, this Sunday is the fourth Sunday in Easter. It's also Shepherd Sunday. So I think I told you yesterday that we have a kind of a special. I hope every worship is special, but this one is special in a very unique way. So tune in for that, and I'll see you tomorrow for our Friday meditation on praying in the Christian mystic tradition. So have a good evening. Hopefully you didn't get too depressed in the rain. Look for a beautiful day on Saturday and get out and enjoy it. But until then, I love you and God loves you.